Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for episode 111. It's that weird binary, semi-binary, wannabe binary number tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about scenario, uniqueness, viability. We're going to talk some Gencon tournament format. And of course, as always, we have our pattern analyzer roundup for some of the store champs that happened this weekend. Tonight, we finished that List Archetype analysis series, and as I spend my time going through and editing it, which is what I've been doing lately in my spare time, we decided that we wanted to do a couple more different type of segments, right? So the one segment that we kind of talked about a little bit last week was tournament format. So tonight, towards the end of the show, that's what we're going to focus on. It's kind of the main content to kind of talk about what the format is, how we can see it, what we can kind of do, if it's a viable thing, compare it to other games out there, and then just kind of go from there. But what I really wanted to do was talk a little bit about the 312 interview that happened again. And now that they've released it publicly and everybody can watch it, they have a portion towards the end of the show where they actually talk a little bit about scenarios, which is their favorite scenario, blah, 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 blah. Well, what I wanted to do is have a quick discussion kind of around what it would be like to essentially, if we introduce a few new scenarios, could we create a rotation system? How would that look and what would that do for the game? Now, with that being said, JJ has tonight off again. He is recovering from an illness. So we decided not to have him show up tonight. But joining me all the way from the east side of the state is my good friend, Alex. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm doing okay. East Coast, West Coast. You know, that's what they say, I think.
I've never heard that before, but I will tell you, East Coast beat, or I don't know, are you guys the West Coast? Is Detroit considered West Coast compared to the Giants? Because, and this is where JJ needs to fucking be here, I've won the bet. The Lions have officially defeated the Giants. They have.
You know, we were 4-0 in the preseason. The season we went 0-16, right?
You know what? It's okay. You want to know the best part about this, Alex? JJ has to wear a Lions hat.
Oh, I got an extra one for him if he wants. I love it.
Oh, do you? Oh, that's even better. Because I was going to buy one, and actually, I was going to reveal the one. I sent him a message on which one I want to buy. I'll throw it into our doc here in a second, because he was not super thrilled with the choices that I came up with. But I found out I had to pay for it. So if I got to pay for it, right, might as well get one that's going to torture him the most.
He could borrow my Indomitian jersey. That will be really fun.
Oh, that'd be really awesome. He would love that. But he has to, for the rest of the year, he officially has to wear a Lions paraphernalia on the show. I just got to figure out how to get him all the...
You know, we're projected to make the playoffs this year. But those people don't understand what it's like being a Lions fan.
I know, if we can make the playoffs, like, is that like the best thing in the world, right?
We didn't do it. We did it not terribly long ago, but also we had the best wide receiver ever. So, and you know, traded away a quarterback that immediately won the Super Bowl the year after. We're fine.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say. I mean, we had Barry Sanders, right? And it didn't matter who we had.
Billy Sims too, one of the best running backs as well. And we wasted 3 careers of all-time greats.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the Lions, man.
So I'm adding those to the doc. We're gonna look at the Tanner's picks, and then I guess JJ can decide if JJ just wants Alex's pick instead.
I mean, I have like legitimate Lions hat. I'm not doing anything super crazy.
Oh, all right. So I brought a picture.
Oh, that's incredible.
Okay, hold on. That's not the best one though. The one after this is the best one. So that's kind of the one I originally found, right? That I was like, hey, let's do that one, right?
Nothing says I'm not from Detroit. That hat.
Now, the second one is this. Because it's a lion's head. And he would have to wear that on stream.
That's not the logo though. That's just a generic lion's head, right?
Okay, but we could put a logo on it. I'll staple one to its forehead. JJ said that he texted me. He's like, that looks like my Halloween costume, I guess now. It's like, hey, whatever I buy you, you now have to wear on stream.
Do I have to get like a Scar hat and we just Lion King this?
You could. I actually own Beauty and the Beast, like
right.
a beast outfit, like a full-bodied outfit. We could do that. I could just like maybe cut the head off that and wear the beast hat.
Hey, Princess Leia is a Disney princess, technically now. Okay.
Well, true. True. But it's not a lion's hat. So
True.
Anyway. So
but man, that first hat, nothing says like I am not from Detroit, but I am a Lions fan like that hat.
Yep. And he
no one in Michigan wears that.
No, nobody would. Well, I would never wear that, no. But they do have, you could wear it somewhere else, right? Like you could wear that to the beach. I mean, you could do it. It's kind of like a beach hat, right? I don't know. No?
That's incredible, though.
Maybe I need to make a bet with you so I can get you that hat too, and then you guys will be like matching buddies.
Oh, I will wear that hat, like out of pride, because I think that's fucking hilarious. Like I will wear that around crowds. I have no shame in my life.
Makes sense.
I fly scum. What self-respect do you think I have now?
Well, I mean, you still got a little bit. I mean, we're gonna see tonight. Scum did not win, but it didn't do anything. This week, there's not really a lot good to say about Scum. But
I'm shocked.
Yeah, there wasn't also big tournaments either, and we're kind of in a lull from Gencon. There was some out there, but there wasn't as many store tournaments as I thought there was going to be. So we have like 6 to cover tonight. It's pretty interesting.
Nice.
I was kind of excited by that. So why don't we actually, you know what? Why don't we get into the list to begin with? Want to do that? Let's just do that.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So on our pattern analyzer segment tonight, we are going to be covering store champs and then one special tournament, but it's going to be kind of weird because it's like an XTC group team thing. So I threw some lists in there, thought we could cover a few of them, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. If you live over in Europe and you were able to go to Belgium this weekend, congrats. I really wanted to go, but when I looked at cost, it was not feasible for this guy to go at all. It was way too expensive to fly to Belgium. It is not a cheap place, I guess.
Oh.
So yeah. So tonight, our first store champ comes to you from Outpost. I think it's Outpost Gaming and Gwent. I have no idea where Gwent is. I know it's not over here. It's overseas somewhere, but that's where it comes from. And as you can see, there was 3 top resistance lists. 2 of them being 5T70s. So still showing up in store champs. Makes me kind of just want to grab 5 of them and throw them on the table, I guess. I don't know. It's a Corey. It feels like a Corey thing, just not a Tanner thing. So
if they didn't actually win a store champ, I would say type 5 T70s probably wouldn't win a store champ. Just because there's better ships you can bring in resistance, and it seems weird they bring like Kai Threnali when you can bring like Kaz, right?
Yeah. So the winner was Tiston, and they came to us with a not very unique, pretty similar to what we've been seeing Empire list. This one has Deathfire in it, though, which that is different. We have not seen Deathfire on the table, and I don't know. Is that because Deathfire is not back yet?
Marcel flew Deathfire. He cheated, but he did it.
Okay.
There's like a clarification because Deathfire says you can launch a bomb or whatever after he dies. That's only if your bomb and or mine can launch.
Oh, yeah.
So it is just normally the bonus attack and or you just drop an additional bomb. But yeah, I think that's the only time we've seen Deathfire.
Yeah, as I say, I haven't seen it. I mean, I guess it makes sense because essentially they're using it as an ion because Deathfire is an I4, right?
Deathfire, I think, is an I2.
I2.
Yeah,
Then I
Deathfire
don't.
is not very high initiative. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty low on there. He is actually an I2, yes.
So I assume the idea is you start murdering things with the other ships, and then Deathfire ionizes you, so you have to sit there, and one ship sticks around to kill you, and everybody else runs away and goes.
I'm actually
after
assuming
somebody
he's there just because he has bombs. That's my guess.
But it's only 2 bombs. You only have protons.
You have a reload. It's red, but you have a reload.
All right, fine, fair enough. Maybe that's why he's there. And I guess if you shoot him to get rid of the proton bombs, then
he drops more. Unless they cheated, then he launches more.
then he throws them.
It's a common mistake. People didn't realize that upon release, Deathfire had like a fact because he's worded poorly.
Good old FFG. So looks like we have the Vader. That must be build your own Vader.
It is build your own Vader with hate, malice, and FCS and afterburners. You wanted the malice and FCS in there instead of taking boy. I mean, I guess the points don't really work out if you're trying to bring 4 other bombers.
Yeah, and this gives them the ability to bring the other bombers that they want. Otherwise, I don't know. Is there like as of now we don't have another bomber that would even be a viable thing put in there. Oh.
Yeah, unless you're bringing like starter pack bombers, there's really no reason for that.
Yeah. Then you have Deathfire with ions, skilled bombardier, and proton bombs.
Rhymer with missiles, not ion torpedoes, because they do have the torp slot. It's worse than ion torpedoes. It's ion missiles.
Why would they? Okay. Anyway, then they have Major Rhymer with disciplined, APTs, munitions failsafe, Ren with crack shot and barrage rockets, and Jonas with crack shot and barrage rockets. Because they must be very good at lining up bullseyes with those things, and I am not.
Crack shot's only primary. I hope they realize that. You can't crack shot off barrage rockets.
No, I know. So I'm assuming it's for after. I don't know. Or if you're at range 1.
Maybe they just cheated twice. Launching bombs and crack shotting off rockets or barrage rockets. Who knows?
Yeah. Either which way, this one went 4-0. The next list that we have was a scum list. Alex, what is this? I don't know. It looks kind of cool.
It is a 4-ship scum list, which you don't typically see. You have Dengar with notorious agile gunner contraband and punishing one. You shoot him, he gives you a strain, and then he shoots you back. That's terrifying. You don't want to joust that. Then you have Bosk, but in the YV, not the Z. So as marksmanship, the child Lando Greedo in overtune modulators. It's questionable, man. Greedo's so hard to bring right now when you're an I4. There's so many I5s and I6s going out there. Then it's CAD with marksmanship, proton cannons, contraband, the title, and proton bombs. And then CAD Solus and the Fang Fighter with Cutthroat, Beskar, and Mando optics.
Overjoy of all things, too, right?
I mean, they're all I4. These 4 points. So you can bring CAD Solus. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can.
Hey, somebody wanted a good time.
He went 3-1, you know?
Yeah. Give me a good time. Let me take CAD Solus.
Went 3-1 with like 2.5 okay ships. Oh. But like, man, don't shoot that Dengar. You'll just die.
Yep, Dengar's just gonna double tap. Be like, oh, here you go. Come on, baby.
Don't let Bosk flank you because he's just getting crits.
All right. So the next one we have is Atomic Empire from North Carolina. Oh, this is the one JJ was going to stream that we were not able to.
Yeah, tragic.
Yeah, looks like we had 4 of them. This actually looked like a pretty fun tournament, except for a lot of Padme and arcs, like double sets of them. Chris Allen trying to win his store champion fight. Thomas squeaked one out. And Alex, that looks like a pretty actually looks a little bit more interesting. We have a ship we have not seen yet, plus another Y-wing that's definitely I don't know. I like Evan. Everybody tells me I'm wrong. So
So I'm assuming this person went to Worlds and wanted to play their cardboard because that's why I think they're playing this. This is a rebel list. They have Boy Luke. They have Evan Verlaine, the Y wing that can spend a focus to make you roll an extra defense dice. She has Hopeful Dorsal Chopper and Seismic Charges. You have Kanan Jarrus in the VCX. Heightened Perception, Dorsal Magva the Child, Agile Baffle, and Ghost. So you got 4 force with that. And you have Keo with Predator, Concussion, and Vectored Cannons.
I like
and
it. Sorry.
Sabine and a TIE Fighter with Lone Wolf. That's a crazy list.
Yeah, so I like the vector cannons. We're not going to have that conversation. That'll be a debate for maybe another night. So I got to ask: do you just not shoot this cannon, let him run out of force, and then if you don't, he gets a target lock no matter what? Like,
but if you don't shoot him, he uses his ability, right? So it's like, I don't know. Do you shoot the Y wing that has? You're rolling one less attack die, and then I don't know. I feel like you can burn a couple of those ships down pretty hard, but also he's going up against pretty stiff competition there, so maybe they're doing something I can't see here.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think that's that becomes the question because with Kanan, with that build for Kanan, I mean, you're not getting the double tap ever. Oh yeah, no, you're not.
You have Agile though.
Yep,
so
you do have
Agile.
Too
bad.
Yep, so you are able to rotate. You don't have to turn around to shoot. You could take 2 churns to get into.
Right, you don't have veteran turret gunners. You're not double tapping with him, but you can keep the turret on target. Also, it's terrifying if you shoot at him with Magva, then you have like 3 or 4 force coming in.
Yeah. And you're just getting stuff. You're getting your force back if they shoot at you. If they don't, I guess you're just going to fly around the board to collect objectives and stop people from rolling too many dice. That's probably what you're doing.
I mean, if you shoot at that Kanan, he's getting a lock and then some force back, like a force back when he shoots back.
Yeah. I guess the only downside is you get a lock. You do get your lock back on Kanan, so you can always take a lock and spend it. But if you're a ship that doesn't have munitions or you're a ship that doesn't want a lock, like, it's not as beneficial, I don't think.
Even funnier, he can actually just baffle off the target lock because it's a red token if you wanted to.
All right, that's 30.
I just, I don't know. Like, I mean, you don't joust Kanan, right? So I don't know. Evan's kind of funny if you do shoot at Kanan, though. Kanan gets just a die roll. Becomes callous.
Yeah, I like Evan. I do like him. I don't know. I actually might put something like this on the table. I would put something like this on the table just for the hell of it. I don't know if I'd do Predator Concussions though on Keo. I think I'm more, if I'm going to run vector cannons, I'm going to put Lone Wolf on Keo.
Then Sabine.
Well, the Sabine can have her typical Beskar plating.
I swear they just have gone to World and wanted to use up some of their dials and cardboard.
All right, I do too. I haven't used any of my dials or cardboard yet. It's still in its original packaging. I will not. I had been thinking about selling the cardboard and keeping the dial or keeping the cards, but I don't know. Kind of weird about that too.
Yeah.
All right, the next top of 3 list is Duncan Howard. Out of all the other ones, I picked Duncan Howard because he has 2 fire sprays and Dirge, and Dirge is kind of the standard loadout if you have a 3 ship list with Lone Wolf, Proton Cannons, Contraband, Xanadu Blood. Then you have Zam with Crackshot, Savage, Oppress, Thermals, Contraband, and Slave 1. And then Django with Notorious, Dooku, and Contraband. So foregoing the double tap with Django and giving Notorious to Django to make you not want to shoot at him. I'm not sold on Crackshot on Zam, but I guess for pushing 1 damage through, it's nice. Zam's not you know.
You feel like those upgrades would actually be flipped around on Zam, right? Where you'd have Notorious on Zam because she can like double tap and then just have the Dooku contraband kind of thing. Then put the Savage and the bombs and whatnot on Django.
Yeah. Yes.
But also that might create too much of an incentive not to shoot Zam. So really it's just kind of like garbage target priority.
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about that before because I think I was on the Notorious Zam train. And I think the big thing that came out of that was it was not worth the people just don't shoot Zam.
Right.
But at the same token, I don't like not having Notorious on Zam because when people just want to murder Zam, Zam goes bye-bye. So, but I'm also not Duncan Howard. So
that's fair. Eventually he'll play that scum, right? Eventually he'll try to win Store Champ. Yeah, I mean, it's the 7th one, right? He's not going to double back around.
He has to. And when he does, if he wins with Scum, we're having him on. Like, it will just be it'll be a conversation. You got to come on, buddy. We got to talk about how you won with Scum.
As long as he takes my Scum list, it'll be fine.
All right. So we have Hobby Knights in Washington, which I actually think they're in Wisconsin. I actually don't think they're in Washington, but I can't remember anymore. It's probably inconsequential. So this one also had 1-4-0, and everybody else was the 3 and 1s. I didn't want to do 2 separatist lists, even though I probably should have, because that was the only other interesting list in the top. So I picked a 2 and 2 list, Alex.
I see this
because I thought it was kind of cool. It is only 2 and 2, but it's 5.
If it means anything,
the N1s.
I'm shocked that it won 2 games.
So, all right. Why don't you tell us who won as the winner? What did they bring?
Ninja, a separatist won, a store champ. Look at that.
I know.
Doing better than Scum. They have DGS 047. Little Roomba there. That cluster missiles, Kalani munitions failsafe, and the stabilizers. Grievous with marksmanship and pervium, afterburner, soulless 1. Dirge with Lone Wolf, proton cannons, contraband, and the title. And then Django with Count Dooku, proton bombs, the title, and veteran tail gunner.
Yep. They opted for the double tap and not for the Notorious tap.
Right. Which I guess I can respect, but I don't know who's following that Django when he's got proton bombs on him. Seems like double bad decisions.
Yeah, somebody that wants to die. You're going to take a crit, and then I'm going to shoot you.
What do you think about that 047 build there?
So I would prefer to have, if I were them, I would prefer not to have the cluster missiles, and I would prefer to have multi-missile pods. I think it's interesting because the Kalani is giving you... Wait, does Kalani even work? Because they don't have calculates their bars.
No, you don't need to calculate. As long as they execute a maneuver, the enemy ship executes a maneuver in their bullseye, they can spend one of the chars and they get a lock on them and a stress. No, so it doesn't require the calculate.
Isn't it a strain? I think it's a strain.
It is a stress token.
Okay. It's interesting. I like the Kalani use, and I'll tell you what, DGS 047 probably gets the bullseye off twice a game at most. But all those other ships, you going into a Django bullseye seems pretty good to me. I don't know.
Dirge, especially with that proton cannons.
Yep.
You get the focus mod off of that and a lock. It's rough.
Yeah, so I do like it. And I don't know if Dirge... Well, I guess Dirge probably does not care because he has contraband. So... I don't know. I like the Kalani. It's better than doing some sort of like a coordinator in that position. And I don't think you have to worry as much about your damage output. You have to be really good to get DGS 47 to shoot double cluster missiles, though, without dying. So I'll just tell you that right now. DGS 47 will die very quickly at range 1.
I mean, the network aim works with Kalani, so I guess there's always that.
True. So
yeah, I like that's kind of a crazy 4-ship CIS list.
Yeah, this is the world's version that they modified because they didn't want to take 404 in it. That's what this is. And I respect that. I think that's pretty nice to see a weird little HMP ship make something good. All right, 2-2 list was 5-1s. We have Rick Olay with Juke, Lone Wolf, R4P, Astromech, Padme with Juke, Ion Torpedoes, R4P, and Passive Sensors, Danae Elbringer with R4P, Astros, Juke, and Plasmas, Gavin Sykes with Juke, Plasmas, and R4P17, and then a Bravo fighter. Because I don't know why you wouldn't bring a handmaiden, because I think you could bring a handmaiden. So I'm a little confused why you just wouldn't have brought the handmaiden, other than maybe it doesn't have room for
They have the exact same loadout.
Okay, then I would have brought a hand.
But the handmaiden
is an I1.
Does not have a torpedo slot. It's the same loadout, doesn't have a torpedo slot, instead it has a mod slot.
Oh, well, that's why then. Well, so they wanted plasmas and R2C4.
Yeah, they snuck Dark One Pro droids on their list to give them the target locks. I don't know what they're doing here.
Yeah, I don't know how they're getting target locks, and not dying. But I don't know. How about this? I don't own 5-1s, but there would be something to I don't know. Come on, Alex, you put that on the table. You got 5 of those, don't you?
I have 2, and then one of them is from Adepticon because it's silver.
Wow. I do not either. I own. Well, you know what? I own 3 of them. We could put the list together ourselves, Alex. There we go.
I have messed around with Gavin because he, other than like the handmaidens, he's the only one that has mod slots. And that's super useful if you have like Saint Council, because if you went faster than your opponent, you don't have to spend a lock because you just have an ability that lets you reroll. And it's definitely interesting. I wouldn't run this list ever. That's a lot of torpedoes too. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they won 2 games, so
yeah. And those lists go very fast, so like you could just zoom all over the board. Maybe Duncan Howard should run that and see if he can win something.
He ain't gonna win 2 games.
All right, next door champ, Brew Wizards in Ontario, Canada. They had I don't I should have looked that up. I didn't look it up to see if they had if the draw was the last round or not. But we had another Separatist. It must have been the week for Separatist, baby, because we had another Separatist list pick up a win tonight. They did the same thing. They had Dirge, Django, Zam. Dirge with marksmanship, proton cannons, and proton bombs. Django with Lone Wolf, contraband, Dooku, and ion bombs. And then they did use Zam with Notorious, Bo-Katan, Bolts Transponder Code, Slave 1, and Ursa Ren Gunner, which I have to look up what Ursa Ren Gunner is because I have no idea what that does. I know what Bo-Katan does, but I have no idea what Ursa Ren Gunner does. And this Zam is the in-your-face Zam. That's what this one is. And it's designed specifically to be in your face because it wants to use that Bo-Katan, which, by the way, can mod dice on attack at range 0. So go ahead, bump Zam all you want, and they're still modding their dice.
Ursa's kind of interesting. That's because that's when you acquire a lock beyond range 2, you get a calculate token. If there's no friendly units at range 0 to 1, the person is locked. So on like an initial engage, if you do the one that acquires a lock instead of using like the double tap for her ability, you can have someone shoot you at range 3 in the opening engagement and then get a calculate out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I don't know if it's better than Boba Fett and like I don't know.
Ursa's only 4, so it's not the worst. Bo-Katan's 6 though. That's the
I know, and you're trading your force point right here for that.
Right.
It's to me that's a little weird. I would want the force point over Bo being able to. I just would be very worried that you're going to get burnt down.
I mean, this seems to be like a Zam that's very good at the opening engagement with like the false transponder codes, right? To jam them at that lock, you get the calculate. If they attack you, they get notorious, all that kind of stuff. So it seems like it's a pretty good anti-alpha, which is probably what you want in a 3-ship list. I still don't know how you go 3-0-1 with it, but they did.
Yeah, they really did. All right.
So the next one.
Yep. The next one was number 5, Brendan from the Nickel City League. Tell us what they ran.
They ran a Republic list. And like my kind of Republic list. I don't know what this is. They had Sicko with multi-missile pod, C-3PO, Agile, Gunner, Synchronized Council. Again, kind of a list or a build I was looking at for Sicko. They have Boost with Dedicated. The correct Z95 with the correct upgrade. Contrail with Crack Shot, Synced, Thermal Detonators, and the config. SOC Kickback. They had a V-Wing Oddball. Plasma Torps, R4P, Synced Council, and Besh. And then an SOC Anakin. Interesting to me, they don't have like an R3 on one of their V-Wings, especially like Contrail, to kind of facilitate a lot of that Synced Council. But it might not just be explicitly going for that,
Yeah, and I think that one I don't know. Like I said, to me that's just weird. But I don't know. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the Crack Shot Contrail before to try to push some kind of damage through. I just feel like if you have Synced Councils and you can actually use it with something like Kickback, who just roll up with the focus, you pass it to him. Or Sicko, if you wanted to do like the multi-missile pod shenanigans, or pass it off to Anakin, or get Oddball in there for a double modded shot. But it works.
Yep. So I just looked up. So the tie, that the draw that came was from the last round. So Gonk and R5 Don drew the last round. So I'm guessing one of them probably had an invite, and the other one wanted the invite guaranteed, so they didn't bother to play each other. So
sure,
that would be my assumption.
And a crazy strength of schedule on the guy who came in first. Yeah, 1.94 rough.
Yeah, he had a very heavy. Yeah, he played. His game 3 was against the third place finisher. I don't know who.
Just to play everyone in the top cut. This is opponents.
Nope. He played somebody from Throwdown and Jake P. I don't know who they were. So I don't know. I don't know how. I don't understand all the SOS stuff specifically. But yeah, so Jake P was up there. Yeah, all of his opponents were 2-2.
It's rough.
Better, so. All right, the next one is one we went over last week. So we're going to skip it. I think we went over this one last week too, didn't we?
I do not recall, but it seems very familiar.
I think that was last week. So that's all of them that I have for that. We do have the XTC Battle for Malianus, however you say that. Team Scotland took home the victory. This is the in-person team event that is supposed to mirror XTC championships, but those are usually online. So this one was done where essentially everybody gets one faction, somebody gets to pair all of them, and they get to kind of choose who they're going to fight. The captains do, and so what I thought, well, let's go over all the lists for the winning team. Then I was like, nah, why don't we just go through like a few of the top ones, because there was 3 10-0s. Unfortunately, one of the 10-0s doesn't have their list in there, and one of the 9-1s doesn't have their list in there.
Perfect.
And I would try to find whoever that person is, if they had played other games, to see if they had the same list. And of course, you can't find the list anywhere. So sorry for that piece of it. So essentially on here, I figured we could kind of look at some of the top lists that I wanted to go through. Just because I thought it'd be fun, maybe.
Yeah,
You want
to?
Yeah, you want to grab the first one there, Alex? They were the top 10-0 player for the whole tournament.
Well, we've seen very similar lists before. It's your Han Solo with Perceptive, Bistan, Chopper, Engine Upgrade title. Boy Luke, A-Wing Wedge with Marksmanship Elusive, a little bit different than what you see. Keo with Lone Wolf and Concussions, and then Sabine with Beskar. Known quantity.
Yeah. No vector cannons on this Keo here. The next list was Fonz. If you remember, if you watched GSP, Fond did a lot on the GSP stream a while back. They are running, for the most part, it's a pretty standard Kylo in the Whisper with Instinctive Aim, Brilliant Evasion, Concussion Missiles, Advanced Optics, and the Sweep. Quick Draw with Fanatical, Swarm Tactics, Targeting Synchronizer, SFG, and Fire Control System. Then we have Whirlwind, who is the staple next to Quick Draw, with Marksmanship, Fanatical, Cluster Missiles, Advanced Optics, and the Suite. Then Malorus with Clusters, and Scorch in the Bomber with Feedback Ping, Bomblet Generator, and Cluster Missiles. Which I think that's a little different. We haven't seen Scorch in a bomber. More health, I guess.
We have occasionally, and I always yell at him for taking the wrong 3-point Scorch. But, it's fun. He's very good. He knows what he's doing. You can use it with targeting synchronizer and whatnot. So I guess there's always that. And
it is a 10-0 list. So, again, a little bit different because you get to choose your matchups. But still, I don't know. Seems pretty good. The next one. What is the next one, Alex?
Oh, man. It's a Republic list. SOC Oddball. SOC Wolf. 7B Mace, who's kind of fallen off in popularity recently. He has Heightened Perception R4 P17. He's got Click with Crackshot R3 and Besh. And then both Slider and Dedicated, Slider and Boost with Dedicated.
Yep.
Seems like a very solid list. You got three die guns there. Click can help on defense, and then you also have Slider and Boost, who are also helping out on defense and getting objectives.
The next one is Tom Reed running a resistance list with Poe, with Notorious, Novice Tech, Ray Gunner, Contraband, Engine Upgrade, and the title. Kaz with Lone Wolf, R1J5, Contraband, Advanced Slam, and Kaz's title. Neonub with Elusive Pattern Analyzer, R6D8, Spare Parts Canister. That's different. I don't. Maybe it's just the points, but
no
cool.
reason for that, but yeah, go on.
And Elo with Predator, M9G8, and the S foils.
So this is almost exactly a resistance list I would run. Because I love that Poe. That's my favorite Poe build. It's also my favorite Kaz build. And if I don't have M9G8 in my build later on somewhere, that is my Elo build. The only thing is 9-nub, elusive, actually super good with this ability. Pattern Analyzer, R68, great. Spare parts, you're just bringing that to either dunk on someone or break the locks you're bringing in. Right, you're not recovering a charge on R6D8. He has no charges, so it's kind of, I don't really have 3 other points, so I'm going to put this in my list kind of thing. And if you're building on with elusive Pattern Analyzer and R6D8, you really don't have much of note on anything else.
Because you don't need electronic baffle, right? So, I don't know.
You really should.
You don't need it, so...
I mean, when I do 9-nub, I do Pattern Analyzer Daredevil R2D2. So you can regenerate shields. You have the Daredevil that you can do out of a Pattern Analyzer, which is really disgusting with his ability. And just Daredevil's really nice on 9-nub in general. You don't have to do the Pattern Analyzer shenanigans for that. But elusive also gives you a free reroll on defense, so always nice.
It is. The next list I selected was an Empire list with Commander Goron with shields and sensitive controls. Shield upgrade and sensitive control. Countdown with Ruthless, Crackshot, Tiberian Saxton. Pierce Sabak with marksmanship and shield upgrade. And then Faroff with Ion Limiter Override, Captain Hark, Targeted Computer, and then Vizier with Palpatine.
This is crazy. So, like, Commandant Goron only will trigger on Fair-Off and Vizier because Countdown and Sabak are the same initiative as Goron and has to be a lower initiative than him. So you're really just passing evades over to the Reapers. Sure. You have Sensitive Controls on Goron, which is weird. I don't know. How well does do 9 and 1 or 10 and 0?
No. It didn't do either of those. It was like either 8 and 2. I think it was like 8 and 2 or 7 and 3.
I don't know what list you would pair into that.
I think it's the list that they just let go play and nobody knows what the list does. They're like, what is this crap? And then they're like, well, let me show you what it does. It's really good. And you're like, oh shit.
Is it?
It did so
yeah, I mean, it can hit hard. You know, they all have 3 dice. Sabak will have 4 for a while until he gets hit a couple times. Countdown's really good for like objectives and just not dying in general. Man, I just I don't believe in strikers.
It's a very defensive list. That's what it feels like. Because everybody's taking evades. You got the Pelp on the team.
I feel like it's just skewed towards offense, and then just try to kill them before they kill you. You just get a bonus with the Reapers leading.
Maybe. I don't know.
It just, it's not like you're taking target locks with anyone on that list except for Fair-Off. None of them could take target locks. So it's kind of weird.
All right, what's the next one we have, Alex?
Okay, the next one up, we have a First Order list. The same one that I believe he won that UK thing with.
Yes, I think so.
Fruitcake Bat. It has Von Reg with Shield Upgrade, Deuterium. Kylo in the Whisper with Brilliant Evasion, Instinctive Aim, Concussion Missiles, Optics, and the config. You got Malorus with Mag Pulse, DT with Deuterium, and then Ember with Marksmanship and Deuterium as well. It's just a hard-hitting list.
Yep, and I still like Ember. I still really like Ember. I just this sucks that Ember is 4 points, but I love me some Ember.
No, Ember is fantastic. Malorus, fantastic. DT, solid. Kylo, solid. You're paying 5 points for Von Reg.
It's your I5. It's your I5 for the list. Or your I6, sorry.
Yeah, cool. I could just take Blackout and live. But, that's my opinion.
Well, the last list we have is a scum list. This was a 6 and 4 list, though. But it is a scum list that has Maul in it, baby. It's got Maul. I love it. It's got Lando Crew, too.
I mean, you might as well.
So, they have Dirge with Fearless and Proton Cannons. So, I'm assuming the Fearless is for when you're not using Proton Cannons?
Yeah, it's the, hey, you jumped range on me. Here, I'm going to change one of my dice to a hit.
Yeah. Which is pretty good. It's definitely a little bit different. And the Contraband, obviously. And then Hate, Lando, Queel, BT1, Night Brother, and Swiveling for Maul. Lee Mackay with Plasmas and R4B11. I don't even know how to say that name. I've never seen that ship on the board ever.
Are these?
Yeah, I've never seen anybody run a lead.
Drossen, it's the other 3-point Y-Wing that's okay. That's the one if you're damaged, you can change a focus to a crit, but you have to change your evade to a focus result on defense.
Oh, this is the one Sean was running. That's the exact same build Sean had with dorsal turret clusters and R3. That's what Sean was running. Okay.
I'm sorry, it's even worse. It's your focus to a blank result, not an evade to a focus result. That would be almost okay.
Yeah.
As a focus to a blank.
Yes, it's the if you shoot at me, I die ship, and if you don't, I'm going to try to murder you.
But remember, Arlise only works in the front attack, so like if you're shooting sideways off dorsal, you can't use her ability.
Nope. The dorsal. Sean told me the dorsal is literally for once you're out of missiles.
Understandable.
But that's it, and that's if you live long enough.
You also don't have targeting synchronizer in this list, so you have to manually take your own locks.
True.
But
And
you
have,
also have them all to coordinate, so it's less bad than other lists I've seen early in.
and then it has Bosk with expert handling and marksmanship.
The best loadout for it. On 6 and 4?
Yeah, 1, 6, and 4. That's pretty good.
You can double mod your Lima off rip. I mean, Maul's 8 points though, right? And that's a lot. That's a lot of points for a gauntlet.
It is, but it's Maul. I don't know. Somebody wanted to run Maul, so.
And you have Quill, just roll crits and evade, or crits and just, heal yourself.
All right. Let's move into the next segment, shall we? So what I wanted to discuss before we kind of get into the main topic for the show tonight, is I want to have a kind of quick discussion about scenario rotations, kind of scenario viability, that type of thing. And I know this kind of be a kind of a little bit contested, at least it was when we first went to 2.5. But essentially in the 312 interview recently, they talked a little bit about AMG, talked a little bit about, how they believe 4 is the minimum and 6 would be essentially the maximum that they would want for scenarios. They also talked a lot about, fans really want points adjustments, but they're not really big into points adjustments. That's not a thing they like to do, which is not what we're used to. But, I mean, we're also not used to scenarios or stuff like that either. But they did talk about seasons a little bit, though. And they did make mention of, we have, this season, and they're seeing how some of these points are going to play out until Worlds. So essentially, I think this is kind of the meta we're going to be living in for Worlds. They also believe the meta is that solved, but, there's that for you, right? But essentially, they kind of talked about that scenarios help level the playing field a little bit between pilots and ships without sacrificing your skill set. So what it's doing is adding a little bit more skill set into the playing field, but it doesn't force them to continue to, have to deal with some of these super overpowered things that they believe, don't exist, but really they do sometimes, like some 7-point Han with a bunch of toys. Anyway.
Boba Fett. Just in general.
Not Separatist Boba Fett, though. Come on.
Yeah, if you're playing Separatist Boba Fett, by all means, I'll give you that.
Wait, you're going to give me a win if I do that? All right, next door champ. You heard it here, folks. Alex is going to concede our game together so that I get a win for running Boba Fett Separatist.
What if I just don't shoot at Boba Fett Separatist?
No, you just said you'd give me a win.
No, we'll make it a game. I just won't shoot at him.
No. I can fit a lot of other stuff in. Anyway, I'm going to get distracted if we go down the Boba Fett tangent. So my thoughts, and this is kind of my thoughts, and then I want to get into like a discussion, Alex. And so my thought was, right, is what if there's a way to rotate scenarios, right? What if we had a way? Would that break the game? Would that not break the game? Could we have like 20 scenarios and like rotate them through based on the season? Could new scenarios create new viability within the game for certain factions that are struggling immensely? Would it allow competitive play to be kind of different and not as uniform, right? So we could go from having like the set of 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, and then all of a sudden competitive play could be like, here you go. You have to prep for all of these, but guess what? Day 1 is going to be this set and day 2 is going to be that set. So there's not as much consistency to add a little bit more randomization, but you already have to play for, how you're going to win that game, right? Also, keeping us off a standard, off of a standard would allow us to not get used to the same set of ships, right? So if one type of scenario is more used to these other things, it would allow for kind of a change up, right, in the meta without there having to be a real change. So the first question to you, Alex, is what are your thoughts? Would more scenarios help the game at all? And we just say, whether it's 1, 2, or 50, would more scenarios introduced help with some of the meta and the viability of the game?
Well, more scenarios would really, I think, impact your list building a lot, which I can respect because like you have to account for even more scenarios than there are now. I feel like it would be kind of a big ask if you went past like 6, because like some people, already don't really understand 100% what's going on with the scenarios. If you start doing like asymmetrical scenarios, that gets kind of weird. Especially if one person plays on the wrong side, or like how you do that. I don't know how you would do an asymmetrical scenario, like how you can account for that in list building. So it would introduce a lot more wrinkles into like list building and kind of strategy you have going into tournaments. I'm kind of satisfied with the 4 we have. I also am not a game designer, so I'm not sure exactly what other kind of scenarios you would have. But I know in the interview, they said they really like having the scenarios because it forces you to like list build. You can't just overtune your list for one particular scenario. It forces you to not necessarily balance out the scenario, but like have a list that, hey, these people are going to be like my dedicated crate runners in salvage, right? So it kind of forces you to do that, or you're just going to ignore salvage the whole time. Or like, hey, I need someone with not a lot who can live without having their actions for scrambled transmissions. I need to have medium or large bases maybe for assault. I need to have odd numbered ships with odd numbered health for chance, kind of thing like that. So I appreciate that it adds a lot of variety, and I like trying to list build around that. And I see how it can really stifle, or make it so it's like, hey, boy, Vader's really good in this, 3 scenarios, but like if I have 3 other ones where he's bad, do I even take him, kind of thing. So it's good. I'm not sure how many more scenarios they could add without it being a little bit daunting, especially for people trying to get into competitive and like memorize these kind of scenarios.
Sure. So your thoughts are, hey, I wouldn't mind 1 or 2 more, but really much more than that is just gonna be too much. So the next question I have, I think you kind of answered it, is, could we get more scenarios than we really? And I think you already kind of answered that. So I don't think we really need to go through that one. And on my side, I think that we could have too many scenarios at one point. But at the same token, that kind of leads into my next one. Should we retire certain scenarios or rotate based on a season, right? And some of this is coming from because I've been playing Diablo 4, right? And there's obviously a unique mechanic for, season 4. And for this portion of it that ends in October. And the difference becomes is they're a multi-million-dollar studio that is going to be able to get, people are buying into this game, spending a lot of money. They have the ability to build new storylines and all these other things that AMG probably doesn't have quite the same capital for. So really thinking about that though, what would you feel, Alex, if let's say they slowly start adding 1 or 2 scenarios to the game. So we get 2 a year, let's say, and then they start to rotate out some of the other ones and move them to a different format, which we won't name the format, but you're just moving it to a different format. And I ask this because I played Star Wars CCG, and I played the Star Wars Destiny, and both those we had like rotating sets. So you would have 3 main sets, 3 legacy sets, and then when the new one dropped, 3 would rotate out. You would only have 4 sets. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's kind of how they did some of those things in the card game world. And that forced people to buy a bunch of shit that, you didn't want to buy, and it probably didn't help the game. But in our world, they're not creating all these packs that you have to buy, right? They're just giving us different scenarios based on content. So do you feel that if they started adding new scenarios to the game, if we started rotating a few of these out, would that even be a viable thing, or is that just going to be way too confusing and make it harder for people to play?
Yeah, so, okay. Set rotation makes sense in like LCG, CCG card games because you rotate out older stuff, you freshen up the meta, and also you force people to buy new stuff, right? In X-Wing, you have the ability to adjust points and loadouts, which you don't in CCGs unless you mass errata, but no one will ever do that. So it doesn't make sense to do like a set rotation. But for the semi-applicable part about that is the rotation out of scenarios. I think that's a lot of burden on the people playing the game. If you have 20 scenarios, these 4 are what we're running with for these seasons, right? That's a lot to keep up with. For people who are lapsed, that's kind of hard to get back into. I could see why that would be, like a beneficial thing. But man, that's a lot of work on the consumer playing the game. I know it's competitive, and like you have different expectations for playing competitive over tabletop, kitchen table kind of stuff. Man, it's just like.
So I have a question though. Like, it was competitive. You did do it for CCGs. Like, it was still competitive. You had to know when you played that game. Like, it wasn't like a, like a whatever type thing. Like, you had to know specifically what it was, what sets were able to be used. Now, this is a little different because this is just scenarios. We're talking just scenarios. We're not even talking like we're going to errata cards or say you can't play these ships, which is
Right,
what FFG was doing.
But when you play like the LCGs and CCGs, you're playing one game. It's not like, like in Magic, right? You have like Commander, Legacy, and all those kind of different formats. It's not like you're saying, "Hey, only people can play Commander for this season," right? It's not like you're just rotating out older sets. You're not fundamentally changing how the game is played. With X-Wing, you are, and that's kind of like a pretty big burden. It's just like there are like 10 scenarios. Store Champs has 5. Worlds will have 4 or whatever, right? It's just kind of like, what do you even build? You can't build a list for all those. It's just kind of how do I tailor my collection to what I perceive to be the current meta for these scenarios that we're doing? Oh, I want to invite the world. Now I have to completely swap parts of my lists and my collection to fit their scenarios that they're doing for that kind of thing. It's just a lot of effort for a game that's not like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and MTG and all that kind of stuff. It's not the biggest cards in the game.
So how about Warhammer? What is Warhammer? Because they got to keep it fresh, otherwise nobody would play that.
Don't like, I don't make new editions. I don't know much about Warhammer.
Okay, because they're doing something obviously to make changes to the game, and I do think you're right. I think it's different editions. Now all of a sudden you got to own Warhammer this and Warhammer that. But what this is saying is
hate that,
but they still play it. People love that game. People play the hell out of that game, man. Like it's not like a dying game. It's definitely not a dying game.
I don't know. Like people super hate like when it switches editions, even in like X-Wing, But it's just again, I don't know too much about Warhammer. I know they have a couple different modes. I think they have like a kill team thing that's more of a skirmish base instead of like armies. But it's all I don't know. It seems like a lot to put on people, and I also feel like Warhammer people, that's all they do. I feel like X-Wing is like I play X-Wing, but I also play like 3 other games.
So how about this? Let me ask the question this way, right? So right now with the 4 scenarios, do you feel these 4 scenarios specifically at any point favor one faction over the other? And again, we're going to exclude scum, so I don't want to have this I don't want to go on a tangent here. Like as a whole, do you feel one scenario favors the other one?
I think the 4 scenarios they have right now is pretty well balanced. I think it forces you either to solely concentrate on killing a lot of things for particular scenarios, which you have to count for, or like you have to field a list that's solid across most of the scenarios.
All right.
Um,
So if that's true, then could we not make more balanced scenarios to release into the wild that doesn't favor factions?
yeah, you can, but again, it's just like how many are you going to do? Like I feel like 6 would be the most that I'd be willing to put up with. And even then, that's like 4 happens to work out perfectly because tour champs, right? But like if you have 5 or 6, sure. I just anything after that, you're just like, what?
All right. So how about this? Let me
It's too
pull.
much of a luck factor than it is like a skill list building skill factor.
So and I don't and I'm going to go on record and say I don't believe AMG values list building. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't personally feel that they feel that is a value of the game. They say they give lip service to some of that piece of it, but I don't really genuinely, the way they build things, it does not fit the MO of what we used to have, I guess. Whether it was perfect or not what we used to have, the FFG specifically valued list building pieces, right? Like that was a thing. That was how, they were working. That's because we didn't have scenarios. So we didn't have any of these other things. So let me throw this at you. Let's pretend, and you're a guy that's played since 1.0, so you own, let's just say, everything. Maybe you don't own CIS or whatever, but
Literally everything.
okay, so you literally own everything. That's even crazier. But so you literally own everything. And let's say we do not get a new ship at all for the next 4 years. The only thing you get is reprints for 4 more years. We may get, let's say, 1 card pack a year, and then we'll continue to get these SL, these special kits that they come out with, like Battle of Yavin, or all these other kits that they come out with that'll have cards in them. Would you be satisfied with playing for the next 4 years these 4 scenarios and nothing else, and not getting new ships entered into the game to change up the variation of your different factions?
I mean, I think the introducing of new pilots and cardboard and ships is enough variety to do it with the stuff they have. But also, I don't. When you said they don't care much about list building, I mean, like their scenarios aren't particularly tailored towards one list or another. I wouldn't say they are. Like it's a healthy balance of you can't have a lot of repositioning stuff with salvage. You can't, have just a low initiative span with, scramble transmissions. You can't just have a bunch of small ships with assault. You can't just have a bunch of like high health, high cost ships with chance.
Mhm.
I think there's enough variety in there that they clearly show they put at least some effort into it. Not when it first came out. That was really broken. But I think after they kind of settled down to scenarios that play to like the strengths of like a balanced list building. I'm sure they could probably add a couple. Again, I'm not a game designer. I don't know what else they could add for it. But I don't think like if there's a lot of scenarios, it's just like a lot to a lot to consider. I think that would turn people off more than it would bring more people into the game.
And that's fair. I don't agree with that, but that's just, again, that's my opinion. And I won't. And the reason I wanted to pose that question, Alex, right, is because I think that it's a valid question. Because is somebody that played like CCGs before, right? And there is a new one on the rise. Not that I want to invest any more money in FFG at all, but there is other games to play, and I think the question becomes, right, is how do you create a long-standing variability? And let me be frank and say, in 2.0, when we had just murder each other, it was great for me while I was learning the game. But as soon as they introduce scenarios, I will be honest and tell you that to me that's what kept me here. I probably in 2 years, if the game doesn't change very much, will not play the same game competitive, because I don't feel, and I hate spending I don't enjoy the large dollar investment I had in CCG. So like, I do not. That's definitely a turnoff for a lot of people, right? But on the exact same token, the variety and the ability, and FFG understood that piece of it. I'm not going to say AMG doesn't. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is FFG understood that, and their solution was to move things on and off the standard list, or whatever they used to call it, right? Change points around every 6 to 8 months. That was like a thing that they did to keep the game fresh. And I think you know,
That was
and
essentially their set rotation because they didn't have
yes,
scenarios and stuff.
exactly, right. And so I don't have a problem with how they did that because it was able to keep it fresh. But when we introduce scenarios, also now I've got this whole new little gimmick, right? I've got this gimmick, and I'm sitting here going, yes, this is really good. I love this piece of it. I think this is some of the best stuff like we've ever gotten. Is scenarios, and I like it because it adds that variability to it without creating too much of a luck standard. You know, but we have dice, right? Like you live and die by the dice. You can make shitty decisions, but you do live and die by the dice. Like if Sunfac is in a great position, range 3, and blanks out on all 4 dice, and you got 1 evade, and you use your evade, but you take a direct hit, when a full health, you're just dead, right? And you can, like, so there is some pieces inside of that game that you can't change. Scenarios to me seems to be like a lever that we can pull on each different side of that coin. And I think that we haven't had this conversation, at least on this podcast, since scenarios came out a year and a half ago. I don't know, however long ago it was. Year and a half now, right? We've been in 2.5 for a year and a half.
If
Are
not
we
a little
old?
bit
This
longer,
old?
yeah.
God, we're old. Anyway, to me, I think the idea is they do different things with Marvel Crisis Protocol, right? Like there's a way, and at some point, like they do different things to keep it fresh. In X-Wing World, they and the 312 thing, they explain why they can't just produce millions of new ships, why it costs and takes a lot more effort to do that than it does for a non-painted mini. Like it's like something that you have to assemble yourself, right? There is more effort that goes into it. And if we aren't going to be getting, like, I liked it when AMG gave me 3 different new ships a year because I went out and I spent money, and sometimes, Tri-Fighters, Chris bought 5 Tri-Fighters the day they came out, 4 Tri-Fighters, I apologize. 4 the day they came out, a 5th one later on because I thought they'd be good. And then they weren't good, and I didn't know what to do because I'd already invested $120 in freaking ships. Yikes. But then I sold some of them, and now I'm down to 3 or 4, But I just think that they have to, as game designers, be thinking of how do we continue to keep meta fresh pieces, right, without making this, impossible. So
Yeah, I mean, again, you could do a couple more scenarios, but I still think that just releasing new content, preferably new ships. I know they haven't done it yet. They still intend on doing it. Preferably new ships would be great. Otherwise, pilots, new standard loadout cars. Like a year ago, did anyone? I mean, no one played bombers, right? And like they were hot garbage, useless. They weren't that good in 2.0 either. But now they're everywhere because they priced them, competitively. They got some strong standard loadout cards coming in that new bomber pack. You now get 2 bombers with the pack. That really helps the people who didn't have to depend on getting a conversion kit because that was the only way you can get bombers. And now they're very prominent in the meta. You got them in the starter pack. That's really good. So if you do things like that with older ships or new ships, I think it helps. I don't think they're gonna bring back like the Oztok, but like,
well, you never know. I would love.
I think
I
it
would
showed
love
up
me
in the
some.
show. Fine, okay, a K-wing. They ain't bringing back a K-wing. So, but I the new YG-2400, it seems a lot less controversial than it was before. I feel like it can probably have a place somewhere. It's still questionable. They might have undertuned it a little bit, but we'll see when it comes out what people can do to break it. But as long as they keep doing things like that, I mean, like Hotshots and Aces 2 had a huge impact on the meta. SOC and boy, also had major impacts on the meta. We just went over a whole bunch of lists that had a lot of that ships. Not so much in Rebels, other than Luke and like Hall, I guess. But they show up. So as long they've shown that if you just have card packs, you can have a big impact on the game, and a little freshen it up and switch it up. I mean, next season they can make Boy Luke 7, right, and then someone else cheaper, and then everyone will flock to that. Hopefully Han goes back up to 8.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so I think we'll move on from that discussion. I think it's still a good discussion, and I thank you for your candid approach and not just agreeing with me blindly, because that doesn't make a podcast.
What kind of co-host would that be?
Yeah. So I just, again, and maybe it's just an adjustment piece, right? Like, to me, it feels like more scenarios would make it fun for me. And rotating old ones out would be beneficial. But I can see your point, in the aspect of it may make it too complex for newer players, which is something we don't want to do. We do not want to ruin the how do we bring new players and experience of it.
So already had enough difficulty trying to teach people 4 scenarios at a time, and then once they learn that, and then they go away for 4 months or whatever and come back, and now you have to tell them, yeah, well, these 2 scenarios are gone now, but then we have these other 2, and then also one of them switched. Now it's 3 instead of 5.
I don't know. I think you could. I still think you could do that, and maybe just not as on a frequent rotation basis as I would prefer. But that's just me. Like, I would prefer 3 points changes a year, maybe 4. Like that. Like, give me something every 3 months, brand new. Maybe that's probably just too much because of scum. Maybe we should get rid of scum, and then we could talk about, can we go to 3 points changes a year? There you go. Because then we don't have to deal with any of the crappy old weird guard stuff.
My poor scum.
I don't know. That's a discussion for another day, because I know that one will draw a lot of ire about wanting to disassemble scum. So, all right. So to round the episode out, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the tournament format that we just seen happen at Gencon, right? And I don't know. Do you think do you think I should put a visual up for this, or do you just want to talk through this, Alex?
I'm not sure what kind of visual you could put up.
My notes. I have my notes.
Oh.
I threw my notes in the doc. We could go through my notes together if you want.
I just recommend that Lions beach hat as your visual.
Just recommend the Lions beach hat as the visual. It is definitely not that. So essentially, in here, will bring it up, I guess, and if whatever it does, it's inconsequential, right? If you don't want to watch it. All right, so the format piece that I have here, right, or the conversation that I have with this is Gencon had a format where they did 5 rounds of Switch, they had 3 days of Swiss, and then anybody that had 11 points or more made day 2. And then day 2 had 2 rounds of Swiss with those people, but you got to carry over your score from day 1. Then they did a top cut of 4 after the 2 rounds of Swiss, whoever made it. The idea behind it, from my understanding, the idea behind it is ideally more rounds of Swiss means everyone plays everyone as much as they can, right? So if you have 100 players, you can't do 100 rounds. That would be ludicrous, right? So what's the next best thing? Pairing people with, like, other people that are doing well versus not. More rounds means that though the top players will play more top players, justifying, more top players eliminating each other, but not to the point where you still couldn't play and win. So a 3-0 player against a 3-0 player, one's going to win, and we're not going to talk about draws for a second. One will win, and then you'll have the ability for that player to still be able to crawl back up to the top of Swiss. Hence, Crispy is a good example of that happening. They carry over the points means that if you wanted to do a draw on day 1, you get less points. Therefore, you have a higher probability of not making top 4. Hence the smaller cut. Also means that if you take 2 IDs in one day, you're essentially guaranteeing you're not making top 4. Is what it's telling. You could do it, but you're probably not making top 4. Sorry. All right. So then kind of where I wanted to go with the discussion is, and this is kind of where, we talk about, is this a good compromise, having more Swiss rounds and a smaller cut? And I think, talking through it, right, like the idea is you want more good players to make it into the top cut. for example, we had 2 4-1s and 2 5-0s make it versus before, right? And the people that missed was only one person. So they have said in the past, people have explained in the past, right, that if you are a really good player and you're at the top, you're going to have a higher probability of making the elite cut, right? So this shows a little bit. We have 2 4-1s and 2 5-0s. 1 5-0 did not make it. They lost both of their games on day 2. Unfortunately, that was, I put Adam Schmidt, but I have no idea if that's who that was. It's A. Schmidt. So I'm assuming it was Adam, maybe Andrew. Maybe Roll Better should just use real names.
Alex. That's what I'm going to go with.
You're going to go with Alex. All right. Whoever it was. I think they're out of Hangar Bay 19. They're out of Indiana. So I don't know the guys from Indiana. Anyway, it's inconsequential. Just ignore my notes. Right?
And Alex Schmidt. I don't remember.
Well, we're calling him Adam today.
Oh.
That's what we're going to do. And then if it's wrong, we'll go back and post and edit it. Right? Then they talk about Jay Comley and Battle Brow. They both were 4-1, right? And then they essentially had a legitimate draw round 1, day 2. So their 6th game, they literally drew each other, which then prevented them essentially from being able to make the top 4. So, do you feel that this draw, this is a good system, right, Alex, to prevent draws? Like, is this a pretty decent solution to force people to actually play games and stop IDing out and just to be able to make cut and stuff like that?
I do think it really cuts down on the IDs. I like that, as a concept. It just kind of sucks if you actually do just get a legitimate tie. But also, you can make the argument of, well, you didn't win the game, so that's what happens when you don't win the game, right? It's hard because I do like it. I like the just like, hey, I like the points carrying over. I think that's really huge about it. Because if you're in, day 1, you're 3-0, normally it would just be like, well, I just ID the next 2 rounds and we all get in. But if the points carry over, you have much more incentive to not ID. And I think that's a solid point system there. Just also sucks when you go 5-0 and the next day you just tank your 2 games.
It is, yep. It is. And I think that doesn't happen super often, right? Like, I think that's an anomaly, and I think that's kind of like what this discussion is for, right? Is we have to discuss a little bit about that, because typically we would say normally if you make the top cut piece of it, right, if you're 5-0, you have a higher probability of making cut, but could have had a bad day, right? Could have been hungover as fuck. Who knows? I mean, it is Gen Con. It was Saturday. So.
We play better when we're hungover. That's Cody and I's secret. That's what we gotta do.
All right. So whatever you do, prevent Alex from drinking. You didn't. Were you hungover when you came and played in Michigan, and on the east side?
No, I had like 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah. All right. So there you
Felt
go.
like I was hungover.
Oh my god, you're killing me. So okay, so this what you're saying is this is a good compromise, right? This feels like a good compromise to prevent IDs and force people to play games in bigger tournaments, at least, right?
It does prevent IDs. I like that just as an incentive doing it. It sucks that it's like, well, we have to do this over multiple days kind of thing. You can't just play a tournament where you're playing like 6 games. Not that people want to do that in general. I love that kind of stuff because I get better the more I play it in the same day. I suck at the beginning and I get better, but I understand why people are just like, yeah, I'm not trying to play a game for 8 hours straight.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if I like the smaller cut with all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I
think
will
that's
say
the big problem I have with it, if I have a problem with it.
Yeah. So in like I said, this is discussion, right? Like, this is us just kind of like, let's just look at what other places do, other things do. So in the chat, they mentioned that Keyforge is doing tournaments now, and essentially it's 2 losses and you're out. So there is very little incentive at that point to stay on. But at the exact same token, that's kind of the same thing, right, in these Gen Con. If you get 2 losses, you aren't going to top cut. but you never know your last game. So if you're 3-1 going into your last game, you don't know if you're going to lose or not.
Keyforge is funny because I made cut at a 1-3. I went 1-3, but so many people dropped that I actually made cut because they're bad at math. Which is hilarious. But yeah, it sucks. Like as a person, just being like, well, I am 2-1. If I lose my second game, I'm basically out of the tournament, right? That it feels bad. But like realistically, you wouldn't have a shot at getting into cut. But also, you're just like, well, I want to play more, see how well I did. Maybe those first 2 games I got diced, or they were super crazy fluky. I played a terrible matchup because I got chance encounter against Isophane, who's bringing a Seer Swarm. You want to try to prove yourself a little bit better than that. I understand, like, it feels bad as a human being to like just scrub out like that, which is why it's like small top cut feels a little bit bad. But like, I think the way that Chris Allen set this up, it makes a lot of sense, and it is far more concerned with people who are really good at the game. They're 3 4 O's, 5 O's. It makes more sense for them to do this kind of format than people who are a best and bench warmer at this game.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, and that's kind of the same thing. Like I went 3-2 at Worlds day 1, right? And then won 2 games. I was super excited. And then I got stuck with Crispy, and I probably just let him get in my head, and that's partially my fault, right? And then I made a couple of mistakes, which really handily lost me the game. But that was kind of the same thing. After that I stopped caring. It was just, all right, who's gonna get me a beer? I don't drink beer, but who's gonna get me the whiskey? I went out and I had Jack and Coke in the cans, and then I just brought those in and started drinking those. I was like, fuck the world at this point. And then I ended up losing that 3 games. So I went 5-5. Although the last game I kind of the last game was against Elliot Watts, and he 4K'd his Vader off the board and ended up winning the game because I stupidly sent 3 ships after 1 game, and then his Vader lived on 1 health because I let his Vader go back on the board. Because it was kind of like, we're already down here. None of us are going to make, top 32 prizes, so who cares? It's inconsequential. He was 46 versus 54th, so what does it matter at that point? But anyway, so let's look at some of the other systems, right? So like what Warhammer does is, and this is kind of interesting, and we're going to use Warhammer, and I know you were a little down on Warhammer before, but Warhammer, essentially they talk about like battle points, right? And the idea is you have a win path for scoring, right? Which whatever, it's essentially the same thing as X-Wing has, just in fancier words. So we're not going to go through all of that. The idea is you don't play somebody outside of your bracket, which I think we have right now. We have that very well. They then have what's called like a 20-point system, and it's something that is used where essentially blowout wins are worth more versus wins that are very close. So if you win a game with like an 80 to 75 score, you get X amount of points, they say 11 points, and your opponent gets 9. Whereas if you win here, you 80 to 20, you get 20 points and your opponent gets 0. I'm not saying that's where we should go, because that sounds very complex. But what it does is it favors people that are winning more handily. So it encourages you to go in and be aggressive, right? That's kind of what it's trying to encourage you. Let's not just try to barely scrape by. And I think it's a system that they've introduced, right? So that you don't. It's like when we have things that sat in the corner. And what did they call that, Alex? What was the name?
The fortressing?
Yeah, there you go. It's like their way of stopping fortressing inside of a Warhammer game. That's what they were trying to do.
Warhammer doesn't have like rotating scenarios when they play in a tournament, do they?
They don't. No,
Okay.
I don't think so at all.
So that would make a lot more sense that like they can do a blowout win kind of stuff. But like an X-Wing, I don't think you can do that, right? Like,
well, I don't know.
I don't like you can get blown out because it's just like a shit matchup. Like again, playing chance encounter, which is one of the 3 or one of the 4 scenarios against someone who brings a Seer Swarm, and your list is not really equipped to fend off a Seer Swarm, right? Like, and then you can get blown out. But I don't think that win should be higher than someone who played a mirror match of 5 T70s.
And if you think about it, it does lend itself a little bit in our SOS ranking, right? Like, and it does lend itself a little bit with our mission points ranking. So, for example, how many times have you and I had the same SOS, and you just happen to have more mission points than twice now?
Sure,
Twice.
but that's like the second tiebreaker. That's not what they
Exactly.
base it off of.
Sure.
So that's just incidental. I don't like, but also if you get like a low strength of schedule, you're probably gonna have higher mission points, right? Like those people are like newer, or you had really good matchups against someone, you end up blowing them out 24-5. Like,
Sure.
is that just as valid as playing, the person who's going to come up in third in this tournament and you come in second, but you won the first game like 20-15? So the person who played someone new is a lot more valid of a win because they won by 15 instead of by 5. It seems off in X-Wing. It just doesn't seem right.
The next example is Magic the Gathering. They have kind of similar. They have kind of similar things, right? So we're not going to really spend much time on that. Marvel Crisis Protocol. Essentially, the ones I looked at took the top 4 of every day, and then they moved on to like a finals day. So if they had 3 heats, they would take basically the top 12 for that time, and then the top 12 play in a between 8. I've put on their top 8 or 16, but it's like it would be a top 12 is what it is. Depending on how many days you had, right? So that's what Marvel Crisis Protocol does, which is kind of closer to what X-Wing does, right? Like that's kind of what we're doing. If you're 4-1, 5-0, they're taking you. Ours is a little bit more generous, I think, than that, because there was obviously 14 people that made cut at Gencon versus only 12. Not much more, but there was a few more. And I think that could have changed, right, based on what you were doing. So then we kind of get into, like, if we talk about the longer aesthetic, right, the bigger aesthetic, like where does tie-breaking Swiss type system show up? There's a ton of literature out there about this. We are not going to spend an hour going through that because I think that would bore the hell out of everybody. Unless y'all want to, then if you do, then go ahead and like send us an email at planninfacesyndicate@gmail.com, and we'll add that back to the agenda at some point to go through every one of the systems. But these are kind of some of the top 4 that I've seen, and I'll give you what I'm going to do, Alex, is I'll go through real quick, give you kind of the top hits for them, and then we could kind of discuss them a little bit, and then we could kind of wrap it up and say, hey, based on what we've talked about, do we feel we're at probably some of the best type of format that we're going to get? Because I think with Chris Allen and him being so in tune with AMG and having conversations with them, I think the Chris Allen method is probably what's going to be used for larger tournaments. And if it's not solidified by AMG very shortly, it's going to be something that they're going to be pushing, right? And so now's our opportunity to kind of say, hey, do we feel this is good? Is there other things that we could throw in there? I know you had an example of you like the top 8 versus a top 4, or maybe a top whatever instead. And I think that that's part of a discussion that we can have for it. So the median system essentially is very similar, but it deals with more games of Swiss, right? And what they do is they take your top 2 and your lowest 2 scoring games, and they kind of eliminate them. And then you kind of get your average from there. Again, not saying that's a good method, just throwing it out there that is a method that could be discussed in terms of how they do it. And if you think about it, our Swiss would never allow for us to have 10 rounds or almost ever.
No.
Like that's a worlds only type scenario, right? Like you couldn't do that almost anywhere else, I don't think. Could be wrong, I guess.
I mean, it's mostly used for chess, correct? So it's
it's a big chess thing. Yep.
Right. So it's they don't have an hour and 15 long games.
Yes. So that's kind of, then they have the 2 varied methods of that where they look at discarding 50% of the disc scores. And again, that's like, to me, that feels like a little bit of overkill. Then they have what's called a cumulative score. Essentially where you calculate it by running different rounds, and each win, loss, or draw changes slightly. It's a varied number based on how many you have. The more wins and things you get, the higher the number or percent of that win you get going forward. That is, again, that's another theory out there that has kind of floated around. The Cash Dan one, essentially is similar to what we're doing, but it rewards 4 points for a win, 2 points for a draw, and 1 point for a loss. I don't know how much that would actually change anything in our world, to be frank with you.
I think that just incentivized drawing more than it does losing.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
unless they count that as an unplayed game where they just don't score it.
No. If you play an unplayed game, it's counted as 0 in that method.
So
Yes.
like if you ID, it'd be like a 0, but if you do like a legitimate
Yes.
draw, it'd be 2. But how do you even regulate that when the person's just like, yeah, well, just flew our boards off at the same time. Flew all of our ships off.
Well, what you would have to do is agree to not shoot each other and fly around and just collect objectives. That's the
Same
only way
thing.
you could do that,
You can intentionally get a tie.
Yeah. So there's that method. The last one is the Sonnenbohr Burger score, and essentially add the score of every opponent the player beats and half the score of every opponent they draw. That's very similar to what our SOS is.
Right.
That essentially is our second tiebreaker, is that piece of it.
Yeah, and these chess ones are a little bit weird because we don't have like ELO ranking systems, so it's not like we can, put more numbers behind it. Just being like, well, this happened and this happened. Like, what do we call an upset, right?
Yeah.
Sure, if I beat Doc Howard, yeah, it's probably an upset, but like in a tournament, like who's to judge that,
Yeah. You would have to have an ELO rank. You would have to have an actual national ranking score that you would keep. And we had that come in as a question before you joined the show, Alex, actually as a question people wanted us to talk about. Like that was something people had talked about. Is that a viability? Something we could do in X? I don't want to get into that tonight because I think that's a can of worms that's bigger than our podcast has time to discuss right now. Like that would be like a full episode, I think, almost. And I'm not saying we are going to take that off the table. I do have that as a long-term discussion point that I think we could talk about. And I think that does help with longevity of the game to some extent. But at this exact same token, like I said, I don't really want to get into it tonight. So those are kind of all the different things, so understanding all those things, Alex, where do you feel we could be at? And what changes do you feel we could make?
I like Chris Allen's scoring system. Feels bad if you're not particularly good. I'd probably like a larger cut out of that, just so people don't feel super bad. But his scoring system makes sense. I don't think we should have more than 2 extra scenarios. I'm not keen on rotating them out. And also, I'm amazed that people made 2 and 2, and they had Dengar and stuff. So that's a nice overall cap of that, eh?
Yeah, and I think the thing is when we talk about this tournament format, and that's kind of do we feel this system is gonna work going forward? And essentially, the tournament format is the idea behind it is how do we get more cuts or rounds of Swiss in? How do we get these type of things to be justified to create a different type of ranking? And I think if we look at the numbers from Gencon, and I think this is what we should do for each major tournament that has multiple day heats, is the top player, the people that are 1 and 2 seed of those days, making the smaller cuts? Like, are they coming closer? So if we take the top 3 every day, and then we get a top 4, are the majority of the people in the top 4 cut coming from the top 3 seeds?
I mean, does that matter?
Day? It does if you look at the theory behind what they're trying to do with a smaller cut. The idea behind a smaller cut is the fact that you're weeding out your competition and you're not allowing room for that variability piece of it that you get with a larger cut. And think about it this way, somebody like Nick Sperry, right, can go through, went 5-0. They took a draw after they won 1 game and then took a draw the next day, and then made the top 4. Right now, not a big deal. Great. The idea would be if they had a top 8, that might be a little bit more scary for somebody to ID just to get in there. Now they got 2 more games that they still have to play that they have to get. So the idea is the top players from all the days to play each other. Then the top players out of those are the ones that go to cut, and only those players. And it's meant to reduce some of the variability. And the theory that was proposed in a very long post by Chris Allen was the theory is that your top players in all of these type of things, if you do more rounds of Swiss and you do these things, top 4 is really all you really need because you're already weeding out. And you should see the top players traditionally in those brackets make the higher end cuts. And if we see that, then we know it's successful. If we don't see that, then we know that there might be a bigger issue and there might be a further discussion happen.
Okay, I get it. I was just like thinking of professional sports where it's like you can go on these crazy win streaks, but it doesn't matter if you blow a bunch of other stuff. It's like you might not make the playoffs or you might get a bad seed. But also most of those are basically round robin, so it doesn't really count.
Yeah. And I think that would be the difference. If we could do round robin with X-Wing, that would be probably the bigger ideal. And Chris Allen admits that. He has a whole conversation about that. Like, he talks about that's like your ideal premium situation, but we can't do that, right? Like, that's an impossibility with in X-Wing. Like, unless they're going to do like a week-long type tournament,
right,
where we all take like a week off of work and they put dollars on the line. Like, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to go play in a week-long X-Wing tournament unless there's money on the line. Like, that's my vacation time to go enjoy myself. I'm not going to spend a week playing X-Wing. I have kids and a wife. My wife would murder me if I did that. I don't know. Maybe you want to do that.
Easy. I got no responsibilities in my life.
Alex's vacation will be a week-long X-Wing tournament he's setting up for Michigan. There you go. Look at that.
Going across Michigan. Going to make our way up to the UP.
We'll just hit, like, everybody has to tour with us.
Giant boss.
You're killing me, son.
Play the people of Potowski. Let's see how good they are at X-Wing.
I actually would happily go up to Petoskey if they had a Sword Champ up there. I would go with you. I would road trip with you.
That's like 4 hours.
I don't care. I would road trip with you. We might not get any sleep though. We might just pull like an all-nighter. Like, we'll meet up in like Lansing area, you and I. No, Petoskey's on my side. You come this way.
Right.
And then we'll just meet up. We'll leave at like 4 a.m. Neither one of us will sleep. We'll do the same thing. I won't sleep either. We'll go up there. We'll get up there by like 8, 9 o'clock. We'll play X-Wing all day. Might have to get a hotel room to come back, though. I don't know if I could drive another 4 hours.
Oh, man, we do have hell. We could actually make so many good puns with that. Take them to Hell, Michigan. There's nothing there. It'd be fun.
That is true. I would go to Hell. They have a good paintball field out there that I used to go to all the time. So
it's better than why am I blanking on the name? Little Bavaria, the German place. Why am I blanking on that?
Little Bavaria. Oh, you mean Frankenmuth?
Yeah, Frankenmuth.
Oh, dude, do you put a tournament in Frankenmuth? I'll take my whole family. I don't give a shit. Like, I love Frankenmuth. They got Christmas Town. They got fried chicken there. They got German food. They got breweries now there, baby. You could go like to a you couldn't do that like when I was growing up. Like, they did not have breweries. They got breweries there now too. So like, it's like, yeah, like it's for me. I'll tell you what. Put a 3-day tournament or 4-day tournament in there. I will 100%. I'd be in Franken. I'd be there. I'd be the first sign up. Boom, baby. That'd be me.
That'd be fun.
That actually sounds like a challenge, Alex. All right, we're gonna put this. We got to put this together for next year. That's what we need to do. We let's move Michigan GT from Lansing to Frankenbooth, and let's find a place. Let's do this. Let's make this happen.
You know, I've actually never been to Frankenbooth, so I know I'm a terrible Michiganian.
Well, next year when we have our what do we want to call the tournament? Do we call it the planning phase, benchwarming planning phase championship? I don't know. We gotta come up with something. We're gonna do this. The set takers do this shit all the time. We gotta figure this out. We're gonna call we're gonna call one of these like hotels up there, see if we can like rent a whole block of rooms, get them like for $50 a night a piece, something like that. Get some prizing going. Oh man.
As long as we do it during the summer so we can blend in with all the Christmas things.
That Christmas place is open year round.
I know, it's terrifying.
It is not. It is awesome. It is awesome. I'll tell you what, we'll make it over the July 26th weekend because that's like literally halfway through the year, so we could call it Christmas in July. That's the name of our tournament.
Yeah,
Christmas in July. Xmas in July.
And then we go to hell for the people who scrubbed out of the tournament.
There you go. Everybody's got to go down to hell. Oh, man. All right. All right. We got a plan, baby. We got to plan this. We got to start the planning now because it's probably going to take us a good long time to plan this shit. We're going to do this next year. That sounds like, that sounds amazing. This could be the new Michigan GT, except for it won't be, like if we're going to do $40 a ticket, let's get some really good prizes and we could contact AMG and see if they can make it like a qualifier for us. Oh my God.
The Bespin Syndicate Throwdown in Frankenmuth.
I can tell you what, JJ would be there in a heartbeat. If we made this like a regional qualifier, JJ would 100% be there. Just, the shitty thing is, you and I probably would not get to play. We'd have to like run the damn thing. That's what's going to happen. Like it's going to take two of us to. All right. Next week on Planning Phase Syndicate, we are going to plan our X-Wing in July tournament in Frankenbooth live on the air. I'm just kidding. It's a good idea, though. I like the idea. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We had very productive discussions tonight, discussing our Gencon tournament format and scenario uniqueness. And viability, if we can add more scenarios, which Tanner says yes, and everybody should just agree with. But that being said, thank you all for joining us. We will be back next week, 9 p.m. Eastern, 2100 Eastern, or 100 UTC time if you are in a different time zone. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the flippity flop.